Welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today my distinguished guest is Chuck Creekmur, aka Jigsaw, aka aka the CEO of allhiphop.com. I just gave you the Chris Rock Method Man introduction, man. How you doing?
I'm good, my brother. Thanks for having me, man. I'm honored.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, I want to get right into it. The name of the workshop is Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. We're gonna kind of unpackage that and see what you think about this idea, this concept of genius being common to all of us. So my first question to you to jump us off is, Chuck, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
Okay, so the answer, I have no definitive answer for that. You know why? Because I don't think a genius should anoint himself or herself as a genius, period. I think I'm a hard worker. I think I'm smart. I think I'm creative. There have been times when I've thought maybe I'm a genius. But if you look at my academics, it wouldn't say I'm a genius at all. I think a lot of if I do have genius, I think that most of it is unknown to the world. I've used a lot of what I'm capable of, but most of it is in my domicile here, and almost for the world not to see. So that's one of my great goals going forward, is to share a lot more. I put that on Facebook. It sounded mad corny, but that's the thing with me. I'm an alpha man and I went over solo, so sharing, and I'm an introvert and I'm an Aquarius. Like, there's a lot about me that sharing is foreign. So I'm trying to get better about sharing.
I get that, man. Like, I'm an introvert too. And so, the things that we do in the public eye is sort of like a contradiction to who we really are. But for the businesses that we have, it's like we got to put on that mask. We got to put on that face. We got to get out in the light. And one of the ways, you can't get out in the light without knowing who you are, because once you're out there, people will try to define you by who they want you to be or how it is that they perceive you. And so that's why one of the ways that I want to encourage people is to self-affirm that this genius concept, this genius label is something that we all possess. And it's not on this Kanye anointing type of thing where you're overstating, right? Because I mean, I feel you completely. Like, I'm not asking you to come out with your Wile E. Coyote card, like, yeah, Wile E. Coyote, super genius type, but it's just as readily as you respond to your name, Chuck, and I respond to the name Reggie, I should respond to this name Genius, because when I respond to the positive affirmation, I won't respond to the negative stuff that other people are going to put on me and you and us. You know what I mean? We can stand as Black men knowing that there are people who are ready to define us by who they want us to be in their world.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's not going to be something that's uplifting, right? So, it's just like once you put that first layer on, it's like I don't accept anything less.
That's a fact.
But I feel you on, did you see that documentary, Genius? No, what was it? With Kanye. What was it called? Yeah, it was Genius.
I saw it.
So what you were saying echoes what was that Rhyme Fest that he was talking to? He was like, you can't call yourself that. You remember that part?
Yeah, I didn't retain most of it, but sounds about right. Rhyme Fest keeps it real. And,
you guys are like keep him to the ground somewhat.
Like Albert Einstein, like, yeah, guys, I'm the genius. Yeah, I'm the genius.
Yeah. And it's funny that you bring up that name, because my follow-up question to you is like, who does come to mind? What name comes to mind when you hear this word genius?
Well, that's a great question. Because I don't think we celebrate most geniuses, right? So when I think, my immediate thoughts on genius is academics, academically, meaning science, math, even art, you know what I mean? When I think of genius, the first person that comes to mind is Stevie Wonder. Okay. Because I deal so heavily with music. So I think Stevie Wonder, because he's such his I mean, he's not a painter, but when you listen to that music, And you know
He
he's
combined.
blind too. He's blind as well. Like, you know, there's something special going on. But
Yes,
there's a
sir.
number of artists that I think are genius. Basquiat, shoot, the Hidden Figures,
Hmm.
the ladies of AKA that help put people in space are geniuses. So there's a lot of different kinds of genius. Now, what I do think is that some of us in the modern era are beneficiaries of people who walked before us. And
Absolutely.
so we're able to take large bits and pieces of them, including with combined with technology and resources and even large sums of money, and smush it all together, and then be able to program or train or even appear to be genius when really you're just good learners, or even masters of your craft, right? Because you know that doesn't necessarily equate to being a genius either. You can be, you can be a well-learned, very intelligent, skillful person and still not be a genius. You know what I mean? So in terms of hip hop, if there's people in hip hop now that can rap better than the ones that pioneered it or were in early on, but it's simply because they're just a part of the evolution. So genius is an interesting word. But you know, I do regard, like, say, Steve Jobs as a genius, or Quincy Jones as
Oh,
a
yeah.
genius. You know what I'm saying? Even though Steve Jobs never invented, like, he didn't create the iPhone, for example. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? But that doesn't take away from his genius.
Yeah. Geniuses know how to collaborate. Geniuses
Hmm.
know how to bring in the right people into a room and say, hey,
Hmm.
look, I see where you
Yeah.
shine. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to try to hinder that. Like, bring that in, bring your idea. I'm going to give you a platform. I'm going to give you a room.
Hmm.
Because genius isn't about everything is about me. Geniuses know, hey, look, my lane is right here. Your lane
Yeah.
is right here. We can't do anything. We can't do as much separate as we can do together. So geniuses
Yeah.
aren't the ones who are trying to know everything and be all things to all people. It's knowing that, hey, I'm doing something that's going to allow me to collaborate with others, and it's also going to open the door for other people behind me. Like you said, the pioneers of hip hop, there are people who now wouldn't exist without them.
Yeah.
So genius in that era opened the door for those to come after them that are lyrically superior to them. But it doesn't
Yeah.
diminish what they did in their role, which defines that individual genius to me.
Oh yeah. I mean, imagine Grandmaster Flash creating the quick mix style of DJing. Just, it wasn't out of thin air, right? But I mean, this right here to or even Grand Wizard Theodore thinking of scratching,
Right.
taking a record and going back and forth. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, and then go, like, come on, like, it's not out of thin air, but it's so close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To take something that was existed and it already pre-existed, and then putting your own twist on it. I mean, think of the genius of hip hop. I mean,
Exactly.
literally coming out of the most horrific conditions and putting a creative lens on horror and seeing some fertile ground.
Yeah. That,
Crazy.
I was there was this documentary that I discovered late, like a couple of years ago, but I was
Uh,
amazed by it because it talked about this aspect that I had never really I knew about it, but I hadn't thought of it as the seeding ground for hip hop. And it was when
uh-huh.
they started taking out from schools, instrumentation and band,
Yeah.
taking away that. So they was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go home and what music do I have around me? I got these records. And because
Uh-huh.
they did to try to limit us, we still creatively said, all right, we can get around that. Let me take these records. I'm gonna make music with these
Yeah.
records. I'm gonna make music with what's in front of me, right? I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
make music with my instrumentation in my mouth, right? And that became
Yeah.
like impetus for what we see now as hip hop, and that's pretty dope.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a fact.
So I want to talk a little bit. I want to connect genius to the trauma that we experience at some point in our lives because it begins to define the world for us and it gives us focus to figure out like what it is that I'm put on this planet to do. So I'm going to backtrack for a second though and go back to this man Einstein. because by and large, when I talk to people about genius, who they think of is him. Like he's on this pedestal, like it's
Mhm.
him, right? And I'm not trying to take anything away from Einstein, but when we put him on this pedestal and then associate genius to that, what we do is we disassociate it from ourselves. Now it's out of reach. Now it's something like, well, I'm not Einstein, so nah, I'm not genius. And you
Mhm.
alluded to it earlier too. He's a genius, but he's a genius in physics. He's a
Mhm.
genius academically, and not that's only one type. There's
Yeah.
other types of geniuses out there, and we got to stop trying to compare what we have to somebody else. You're really bad at that, like trying to define ourselves by someone else, and a lot of times we end up shortchanging ourselves. So yeah, it's not all GPA, it's not all IQ, high IQ, right? Those are defining a genius that may not be what you possess,
Yeah.
and we gotta learn to say, okay, I recognize that in him, but what is it in me though
Mhm.
that doesn't look like that? Because I mean, Chuck, I don't know what you think, but I don't look nothing like Einstein. I don't think you look nothing like him either.
Nah, Einstein is, in a class all by himself, and yet, um, and I don't know his story in particular, but I do know that a ton of Black people were right there helping people like Einstein,
Thomas
and they
Edison.
didn't
Yep.
get credit, and they were wiped out of history, and their contributions were erased. So this notion of genius is oftentimes a result of widespread racism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Straight like that. Erasure, straight like that. And I mean, even potato chips was created by a Black man. You know what I mean? As crazy and simple as that is. I don't know
Yep.
if that represents genius, but the point is these types of contributions, they should be known. And yeah, man, I mean, I think that again, man, I'm wearing King Tut right here, for
Okay.
example.
Okay.
The Egyptians, they still can't figure out how the
How they
Egyptian
did it.
created the pyramids. And so go so far as to say that maybe aliens did it.
Right.
Come on, dog. Like, really?
You can't give
I
us
mean,
no credit.
there's huge sculptures called the Olmec in South America. It's actually proof. There's pyramids in South America too, by the way. There's
Yep.
actually proof that Black people were in this area, in this region before everyone. And the noses are huge, the lips are huge,
Mm-hmm.
and not for nothing, the statues are massive. And they're just like, how did they do this?
Right.
How did they move this? How did it get here? That's genius.
Yeah.
So we've been disassociated from our greatness and our genius through history, but not just through history. It's been extremely intentional. It's not
Yeah.
just a passage of time. We know about the Greeks and their greatness, and yet they got almost everything from Africa.
Yes, sir.
Period. And I went to Greece, and they admitted it. You know what I mean? They didn't overstate it. You know what I'm saying? But they let it be known that we got a little something from the Greek from Africa, through trade and so on and so forth. I mean, they don't want to you know undermine what they feel they've contributed, but the fact is most of it was stolen, straight
Right.
up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, that's why, I think that this figure, Einstein, is an important one because it defines for me why so many people don't consider themselves to be a genius because they attribute it to him and say, well, that's it. I don't belong in that. And we got to see ourselves on the inside of it. That's why I keep saying, like, if we don't know who we are, somebody else is going to try and define it for us or take something away from us in the process of us trying to discover our own genius, right? So I've done this interview one-on-one for past couple of months, and what I've noticed is when the people who say I don't have it, when they identify who does have it, it's somebody that does not look like them, and that's why they're discounting themselves. But when somebody says like your brother was like, yo, my dad was your father, his dad, he's like, my dad was a genius, and
Mhm.
so his answer was different. He was like, yes, I'm a genius, and I think it's because he was able to identify genius was somebody that he could relate to. Even
Mhm.
your Stevie Wonder, you can relate to Stevie Wonder first and foremost because you're a black male and he was a black male. And so
Mhm.
that brings it closer to you to be like, that's something that I think I can at least aspire towards or be adjacent to versus, saying something like Einstein, someone like Einstein. So, like I said, no disrespect to Einstein. In fact, I mean,
It
the
was a
funny
good
thing
dude.
yeah, the funny thing about him, he was told in like secondary school, like, yeah, you might want
Mhm.
to Einstein work with his hands because he's not that bright. He's not picking up what he
Mhm.
in school.
Yeah.
So that gets into a whole other thing about it's reiterating what I'm saying. Like the way people want to define you, you got to make sure that like, nah, that's not who I am, though. Because if he had listened, if his parents had listened to what his teachers were saying, we would have been robbed of one of the greatest physics intellects in the world. They're still proving his theory of relativity with the most recent technology, the most recent telescopes are looking out into the far reaches of the galaxy and still proving the things that he
Mhm.
theorized over 100 years ago. This man been dead for a minute.
The thing is school systems are the greatest destroyer of genius, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, they will latch on to someone who gets great grades, but
Mm-hmm.
they will all almost every time. Maybe it's changed, but when I was coming up, I'll never forget, dude. I will never forget third grade talent show. I wanted to be in the talent show.
Mm-hmm.
I was an artist, and them telling me you can't be in the talent show because you're drawing, you're not doing dance or singing. And I'm like, yo, but this is my talent. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Now I'm blessed. I had I mean, excuse me, I did have some great teachers, but I'm blessed that I had great parents, and they were protective, and they were teachers too,
Yeah.
and they were black teachers in those times, and they were highly acutely aware of racism, acutely aware of the way the system works and the way it shuts down black kids, puts them in special ed, and won't even generally allow them to develop their skills. So my parents, I mean, yo, it's so crazy, man. Let me tell you something. My dad, here's a story for you.
Okay.
My dad used to bring home art supplies for me to draw with. And I'm not talking just crayons. I'm talking about big pieces of paper like
Mm-hmm.
this thick paper, endless pens, pencils, everything, markers, everything you could ever want. And and I'm like, wow, this is cool. You know, I ain't got it. I mean, I still have some of this paper. I mean, literally, not even joking. And uh, so a few, maybe a year, maybe within the last year or so, a man named Percy Ricks he's passed away, but they do a posthumous art show on him
Okay.
and his eye for art. Come to find out, my dad taught with this man. And this is the art teacher that was feeding all the supplies to my dad
Wow.
that eventually got to me. The racism in Delaware was so bad that they didn't allow him to display black art back in the day. So they're going back and making right what was wrong
Sure.
back then, only to find out this circularity is so crazy to me. It was mind-blowing. And
Yeah.
I didn't get into art. I'm still into it, but I didn't do it for reasons that I just didn't see it as a viable way of living, making money. And
Right.
I think that's part of the discouragement that I grew up with. Even though outside of school, my parents made sure I stayed in it, and I had a great art teacher, Mr. Evans. But when I graduated, I was like, I don't know about this, you
Yeah.
know. So I hate looking through the lens of racism, but it's something that I think we have to stay tuned in with on some level in order to
You do.
recognize that there's forces actively suppressing our greatness and our genius.
Yep. Because the crazy thing about it, when I ask people about Einstein, I'm like, who told you that? Did somebody tell you that? Did you learn that? It's just this thing that's just
Mhm.
in the background that just
Yeah.
kind of imposes itself on us and we don't even realize it. It's like we're programmed to condition with that information. That's the most dangerous information that you don't ever remember learning It's just something
Right.
that's on the inside of you. Like, where'd that come from though?
That's true. And furthermore, there's innumerable black geniuses, endless, nameless
Yes,
black
sir.
geniuses that don't get put on that Mount Rushmore because it's simple. We don't learn about them.
Yep.
You
We
know,
learned about the same five people
absolutely. I mean,
everywhere.
absolutely. And I think that it's happening to this day. I mean, Martin Luther King, what can we really say about Martin Luther King right now? Like, what can most people say about Martin Luther King? They can't tell you nothing really
Right.
about King, you know. They can't tell you much about him. And he's a
Yes, sir.
genius in his regard, in his
Yes,
right,
he
as
is. Yes, he
was
was.
Gandhi and others. But, you know, we
There's a line from Most Def that resonates with me. I wrote a poem off of it, riffing off of what he said, but he was like, the invisible man got the whole world watching, right? And so
yeah.
I made this poem called Watch the Invisible Man. And I talked about the guy that made the 8-bit cartridges that we all had to blow on. That was designed by a black man. The resistor that's
Oh,
in all
yeah. And he got jerked.
yep.
And he
It's
got
so many
jerked.
things that we use that entertain
Yeah.
us, that help us progress in electronics. You know what I'm saying? Like I mentioned Thomas Edison. I forgot my man's name. That's unfortunate. But his work was built on the back of this black man.
Yeah.
And it's so much. I gotta share that with you one time because yeah, it's a lot out there. We could go off on a whole riff on that, but I'm gonna try to steer us. I'm gonna try to steer us away. I have a quote that I wanna say to you. You gotta let me know if you've heard it before, and then let me know like how it hits you. It purportedly comes from Einstein himself, which is kind of ironic, but I think he recognized that if this does come from him, he recognized that there's more than just the genius that people began to eventually put on him. Because even in college, they were still denying him, like, dude, get out of my class. You daydreaming, looking out this window, and they didn't even know that he was imagining what it would look like to
Wow.
ride a light beam from the sun to the earth, and that's
Wow.
how he came up with the theory of relativity. But it was like, you don't fit in here. But anyways, you ready for the quote?
Yeah.
Here we go. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
I've heard that quote before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you? What is that saying?
Well, I mean, yeah, there are different types of geniuses. You know, that's how I measure it. I mean, that's how I process it. And it takes a lot to push through that. And it's not just a color thing either. It's not just a racial thing either. I just think that we judge mostly by European or traditional standards.
Yeah.
And those traditions aren't necessarily in line with our DNA.
They're not
Our
inclusive.
yeah. I mean, um, yeah, man. So that's basically it, man. There's another one that's like, what's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay. I
mean,
get that.
you know what I'm saying? Like, so I just, man, I do my best to not, and it's tough sometimes, man, because we came up through the tradition. When we both went to college and stuff, you learn how to code switch. And sometimes, you get caught up in that too. So I try to, I'm like on a no code switch tip right now. Like I'm not really into changing up.
Take
You know
me
what
for
I'm
who
saying?
I am, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that's the most, authentic way to be yourself. I think it's the most authentic way to get respect. I think you feel better when you're your authentic self. I don't think that means, you have free reign to act like a daggone fool or
Yeah, yeah.
like just be ignorant for ignorance sake. I don't agree with that. But, you know, I think that we have to do better. And I think that yeah. So I'm tired of, I try my best not to even look down on people. Some people are from super rural areas or super, down home, whatever. And black people, sometimes that's regarded as ignorant. Ebonics might be regarded as ignorance, but when your whole language is snatched, your whole religion is
Right.
taken or co-opted, and you have to survive by any means, you know, a lot of that is like genius on a whole different level. Being able to survive in a lot of ways is genius. All the techniques we use, like women used to braid their hair in maps, you know what I'm saying, that they would use to actually escape,
That's deep.
bro, it's deep.
It's survival, right?
Yeah,
It's,
man.
it's an adaptation, which is, like right now, I think we're in the vein of, hey, look, I'm not gonna, what I hear you saying, I think is, I'm not gonna adapt to my environment anymore. My environment gonna have to adapt to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, absolutely, man. And with my company, with all hip hop, we've endured, and I'm using this word, we've endured violence. We pioneered and endured a lot of violence towards us as a company, towards us as a pioneer in the tech space, towards us as an independent media outlet. Every step of the way, it's been violence, enacted on us. And we had to plow through that through ingenuity, through, brute force sometimes.
Yeah.
And through, being just like having the moxie to just do it. You know what I mean? And so, we don't get the credit, right? So our company was the first company to deliver wireless news transmissions to at that time two-way pagers and devices that would allow for it.
Yeah.
But at the time, two-way pagers were the most popular thing, and you can ask anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was doing it before us, and that's what gave us the advantage over all other internet companies, among other things. But that was one that put the whole entire industry on notice.
Yeah.
If that ain't genius, I'm like, I think, yeah. Now, granted, we were using pre-existing technology and things that were there, but no one did it that way.
Right.
Nobody, and so
How many years? Just let the people know, man. How many years you celebrate now with all hip hop?
right now, hip hop is 24, and truth be told, that 24 is representative of the year Greg and I partnered. So Greg and I had been building prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a website, I had a website, and then I took all of the stuff that I was doing on my website, which is stuff that was done independent of the website. I was writing for magazines, I was doing graphics, and I took all of those things that I was doing and I just put them on Greg's site, you know.
Yeah.
I was doing all the work on that site anyway, keeping it a buck.
Yep.
All the web design, all the logos, all the interviews. I mean, I was doing it anyway. So it got kind of to a point where I was happy to have a person to partner with that was going to put in the work too and dig in just like I was.
Yeah.
So
And that
that
gets back to a while ago when I said, hey, what one person can do individually and another person can do individually ain't the same as when they come together.
Oh yeah, man. I swear to God, man. I mean, no sacrilege intended, but I really do thank God, I should say, for giving me the discern, like the to be able to discern, to put aside my ego and partner with Greg. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying? Because Greg and I were very competitive most of the 90s.
Really?
We used to rap. We both in Delaware at that time on the rap scene, in a hip hop way. I still got we never did a song together. I mean, it's almost ridiculous. We were like friendly competition.
Yeah.
So I put his brother on stage for the very first time at UD. And it was all love, you know what I mean? But me and Greg never did a song together, you know what I'm saying? And we never, me and his brother did. I'm not sure why that never happened, but either way, that was a game-changing moment, man. So I know that we're masters of resources, we're masters of our environment. Black people, I mean, again, I don't want to put too much of, I know I'm going to, you drop me in a desert, I'm gonna figure it out. you put me anywhere and I'm going to figure it out. And that's, I don't know if you call that genius. I'm not trying to classify myself in any way. But you put me anywhere. And that's why I moved to New York. I said, oh, where I got to go?
Right.
Where do I got to go to make my mark? Where do I got to go? Give me the hardest borough, like just where, so I moved to Brooklyn. I think the Bronx might might have to be. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Each borough has its own thing.
Right.
But
You
yeah,
mentioned Brooklyn. That you mean what you just said reminded me of Jay-Z. He was like, "Put me anywhere on God's green earth, I'll triple my worth." Right?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we it's survival mode. But
Yeah,
out of the, like what is it? What's the mother of invention? Necessity is the mother of invention, and invention has to do with understanding your genius.
yeah.
So what I want to do to move us forward in transition is get into these three components that we've kind of deconstructed what genius is, and I want us to reconstruct it using three components, and it's passion, talent, and purpose. So
Mhm.
just like I asked you about genius, what word comes to mind when you hear this word passion?
Passion is, to me, what you do when you have nothing, when there's no money involved,
Mhm.
there's no wife or kids involved, there's no when you're just in your zone, in your space, your honest space, what do you do?
Yeah.
you know so my passion has always been hip hop, comic books and everything around it, and hip hop and music, art and comic books, and what's the other one? Well, I think I just said it. Uh, Hip hop. I feel like there's one more. I don't know why I feel like there's one more. I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to say boxing because I never tried boxing, but
Okay.
I never did it. You know what I mean? That's a passion of mine, but anywho, but it's what you do when you get off work, what do you do?
Right.
I hit a heavy bag. What do I do? I draw. What do I do? I go all out for hip hop. When I was working full time at that bank before I left for New York, I,
Mm-hmm.
I would work all day. I would come straight home and I go straight to my other job, which is my passion. And I would go to New York. I would go to Virginia, whatever, wherever, within that 3 miles. I mean, excuse me, 3 hour radius of Delaware. I was there
He was there. Yeah.
driving. And at that particular time, Chris Brown was my dog. We was on the same type of time. So Chris Brown was my man for when it was time to go to New York and see, Big Daddy Kane or whoever, he was there. When it was time to go to Virginia for Skills, or when it was time to go to Virginia for Redman and Method Man,
Mm-hmm.
we hit that highway. You know what I'm saying? And so that's passion. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I mean, dude, I wish I understood now the passion I had then, because my energy was through. I mean,
Right.
it's unimaginable how much energy I had. And don't even mention stuff like the frat and things of that nature that was taking up the time too, or girls or whatever. You know what I mean? Like all of that was happening simultaneously. Jobs, girls, fraternity, all hip hop or whatever, whatever else. I mean, I was writing for magazines then too,
Right.
you know, and probably wasn't drawing as much at that point, but I was doing digital art. You know what I mean? So that's what passion is, man. It's a driver.
It
Uh,
is.
it's a driver, and you can't. And most people let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Most people let it die. But I never lost um, that childlike, youthful um quality where my passions never died.
Yeah.
None of them ever died. I wouldn't let them die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even my art, man, I'm telling you, man, when I bust down 60 or something, 60, 65, I'm gonna leave all of it behind and I'm just going straight to art for the rest of my life.
I hear
You know?
that.
Yeah.
The thing of it is like what you mentioned about how you would drive within a 3 hour radius. to get to dabble in what it is that you're like, I'm trying to figure this out. What is this? How far can I take this? Right. It reminds me of what one of my other guests said. There was like, passion is the gas in your tank.
Mm.
Because it drives you. It'll push you forward. It'll push you up. It's going to push
Mm-hmm.
you. It's never going to take you back. It's going to always take you up, around,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, through whatever obstacle comes
Yeah.
in front of you, because that drive is unquenchable. You
Yeah.
can't, right?
Yeah.
And the
That's
thing it is, I like that you said, like, yo, when you're not responsible for anybody else, is what I heard you say. That's when your passion is kindled the most. And it can get tempered when you begin to have other people who you're responsible for now. And sometimes your passion gets relegated to a hobby, but
mm-hmm.
hopefully it never leaves you, right? Because it's a fire that's on the inside of you. And so I want to redefine passion a little bit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta be honest with you. There were some components. I didn't come up with this. We've been talking about how, hey, look, genius isn't about coming up with something from scratch. That can happen, but it can also be you just taking what your environment gives you and then retooling it to something that hasn't been seen before. That's what hip hop is, right? So I can't take this genius, passion, talent, purpose and say that I came up with it on my own. You remember Def Poetry Jam back in the day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bruce George came up with that whole concept, that platform to give poets an audience.
Mm-hmm.
With Def Comedy Jam, Def Poetry Jam, and eventually it got online. Through that online component, I met Bruce George because I was competing and winning some stuff with my poetry and
Yeah.
high. And so I stayed connected with Bruce George. And a couple of years ago, I was like, yo, what are you doing now? Because I know you're into something. And he was like, yo, I got this whole movement that I'm starting, this brand of genius is common. And I was like, yo, I'm out in Chicago. What can I do to help you? He was like, just get the word out. He's like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to take this elite word that's been whitewashed and make it universal. Just
Mm.
take it however started with putting it on shirts or whatever, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
was the first component. And then I read this book by this cat named Mike Murdoch called The Assignment. And
Mm-hmm.
in that book, it tells you, look, if you want to figure out what your assignment is, what your purpose on this earth is, figure out and connect your passion, not to what you love, but to what you hate. And I
Yeah.
was like, huh. And so I
Mm.
kept reading. It's a short read. It's like 100 pages. But he was like, yo, like when you look out on the world, there are some things that traumatize you, that affect you in a
Mm-hmm.
negative way that nobody else responds to. And when you see it, you be like, yo, I don't like how that makes me feel. And most of the time, you're introduced to it at a young age. As you get older, you may begin to heal from it. But when you see
Mm-hmm.
it operating in other people and affecting other people, you're like, I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
What you begin to say eventually is, man, somebody should do something about that. And if you find yourself constantly looking around like, am I going to do nothing about that? Nobody else is upset about
Right.
this. Guess what? The
Yeah.
person that's supposed to do something about it is you.
Yeah. Right.
And so
Yeah.
he's tying that to your passion because that's getting at systems now. Because passion, the thing that you hate is never something small. It's
Right.
something like
Yeah.
gigantic that's impacting a bunch of people. And you're like, that should not be. And so
Mm-hmm.
when it's that big, now you got this David Goliath moment where you're like, yo, I don't care how big this dude is, yo, I'm taking his head off.
Yeah. That's a
I don't
fact.
care how long it takes. I'm gonna get at this thing, this obstacle that's in front of me and blocking other people
Yeah.
and making it so that somebody is being traumatized, marginalized, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So from that vein, Chuck, what do you hate?
My, I hate racism. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
It's number one. Um, so there's a couple of things, but I hate racism, bro. And that's been a heavy driver. In fact, I just got off with a rapper who I won't say his name right now because we just squashed it. Literally, I was texting with him as we started, but a long time ago, and he was traumatized by this as well. So we had a good dialogue about it. And I don't think he's a racist, but he used the N-word, white rapper. So I guess
Okay.
that kind of gives it away a little bit. But white rapper who used the N-word, and he admitted it. And so for me, I associate white people using that word with racism on
Yeah.
some level or another. It could be one form or it could be another form. Nevertheless, um, I hate racism. So that's a driver for me. It's always been a driver for me because I experienced so much of it growing up, whether it be the teachers in my middle school were so bad, some of them, that forced me to change schools to another school that wasn't that great, public school,
Yeah.
or whether it was, marching against the Ku Klux Klan at UD,
Mhm.
and or starting the student paper, black student paper, or restarting the black student paper because the white student paper just couldn't get it right for whatever reason. And to me, that's also a form of racism. It's passive, but it's a form of racism, especially when you're talking about newspapers. And so that's a big driver for me. Now, my so anyway, so I don't want to be too long-winded. So I'll stop there with it. And so, racial equality, things of that sort always are threaded throughout my company, my life, all hip hop, my daughter. I mean, I'm acutely aware of it as a parent. Um, Other than that, you mentioned something as well, David and Goliath. When all hip hop started, I was not, and this is, and this is again, this really has nothing to do with all hip hop, but I hate that notion of David versus Goliath. I've always been David, it seems like, you
Yeah.
know, and so even growing up, I hated bullies. I
Mhm.
couldn't stand bullies. I've never really gotten into a fight that didn't have to deal with bullying or someone being bullied and I'm jumping into it because you're bullying somebody. I mean,
Right.
it's almost always happened that way. So when I did get down to the all hip hop side of things, I and this isn't necessarily exact, but I just found that I wasn't a cool kid outside of Delaware. You know what I mean? Like I was outsider, and me and Greg still feel like we're outsiders to this day, really.
Yeah.
And nobody believes it because they see you,
In the
kind of
middle of.
fraternize. Yeah, but listen, man, I ain't been to nobody's house. Well, that's not fully true. I've been to a couple houses, but not many.
Yeah.
And so, I think about that and all the people who didn't want us to prosper when we first started. And I don't hold grudges. I know those people and the ones that flipped this, that flipped over and became cool with you once they realized I got to either deal with them or they ain't
I agree.
going nowhere, or you know, I should be on their good side, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we've always been that, and we're David now, because hip hop's fully corporate now. Hip hop is in some ways co-opted.
Mhm.
Large corporations own media outlets. Large corporations own the artists. And I mean, that sounds probably a little shaky, but really having a heavy hand on the culture right now. So when you stand for something, you won't just sit and allow for uh, things to happen the way others want them to happen, the
Exactly.
way you see hip hop, or where the way you see or the way you feel it should be. Nah. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
definitely feel like at the seat, at the foundation, at the base of all hip hop is this hatred though. Like, look, you're trying to there is this entity and these people out here who are trying to define hip hop by how their world works. And
Yeah.
even when you were at Delaware, and you were seeing how the newspapers were like, you don't see your bias is showing in how you're writing. Like you
Mhm.
completely disregarding and completely stereotyping a whole body of people without even figuring out what their real voice is. And
Yeah.
I see you as the one who through this hatred, and I'm glad that you embrace that word because some people get real touchy about that word. But you are very much about what hip hop is, and it's providing a voice to the voiceless. Like y'all not gonna just go out here and start speaking for us. We're going to make sure that our hat is in the ring so that when the conversation comes up, it's not going to be what you say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fact. And it's hard sometimes, man, because first of all, I don't hate white people.
Right.
Somebody accused me of hating white people because I objected to Kanye West talking about all white lives matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, dude, I didn't even respond. I just blocked him because I don't indulge with stupid people. You know
You
what
got
I'm saying? Yeah, I gave him one reply, and then when he came back with that, just say you hate white people. I'm like, all right, bro, block,
Yep.
because I grew up with white people, dude.
Right.
Like, I can't possibly hate white people. You know what I'm saying? I can hate some, but I definitely can't hate them all.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, or at least childhood best friends, is definitely a white dude.
I know you're talking about too. I'm not gonna put his name out there.
Yeah. So and we have some disagreements as well. We've had disagreements. Our first disagreement started with George Bush. I mean, shoot, I was like, oh wow, you're Republican?
Yeah.
I mean, I had, wow, okay, I had no idea. Well, then, okay, let's have that conversation.
Had that conversation. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Normalizing these difficult conversations is how people grow though. How you can grow and how he can grow so that, we don't just keep, because we all have prejudice, we all have bias, we
Mm-hmm.
all judge. It's how we make sense of the world, but it's the difference is once you encounter someone from this place of bias that you have, are you going to
Mm-hmm.
continue to just put your thoughts on them, or are you going to give them a chance to, you know what though? Let me hear what you got to say. Now, I don't know if you read White Fragility, but it talks about how racism is nothing more than prejudice and bias enforced by laws.
Yeah.
And see, we don't write laws in this country. The
Right.
minorities don't write the laws. The majority does, and that's where racism comes from. If your biased and prejudiced thoughts are reinforced by law, then that's
Mm-hmm.
racism.
Yeah. The power dynamic is something that people don't speak enough of, but
Nah,
it's power as well.
to your point, I don't hate white people. Like whenever I talk to kids about with this message, I'm like, when I ask you what do you hate, don't say like a person's name, her. Like I'm like, no, don't do that. Like
Right.
if you got to think about a person, just think about what that person represents and what you hate about that person. And most of the time, it gets into like prejudice, bigotry, things like that. And it's like, okay, that's what you hate. Stop, separate it from the person, right?
Yeah.
So here's why this is so important. Remember this quote about a fish climbing a tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fish is defined and designed to be in water. Everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this system in place that says like, yeah, I know what you were made for, but I want you got to operate by this way. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow this fish has conditioned itself to, I got to climb this tree, I got to climb this tree, even at the cost of its life. Because if a fish stays out of water long enough, what's going to happen?
Won't die,
It's
suffocate.
gonna die, right? So I see like dying genius all around me because people have had their potential taken out of context and not even considering what it is that really defines who they are. So check
Mm-hmm.
out this example for you. I got a story for you. So I took this message to an elementary school one time. The principal asked me to come through, talk to the kids. It was like 10 little boys. They were all minority students. And she was like, yo, they just need some encouragement. Can you just come by every Friday and talk? I'm like, bet. I got this idea that I've been workshopping. Let me tell them about this genius concept, right? Get into the classroom. And one of the first things I tell them is like, yo, each of you is a genius. And Chuck, they looked at me like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Bro, I think you're in the wrong class. Some of them got offended. Like, don't tell me, don't call me that. And I'm like, yo, okay. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like they were used to negative affirmations. They were used to ADD, ADHD, emotionally unstable, disruptive in class. They were normalized and conditioned to accept that. But when a positive affirmation came, hey, you're a genius, they was like, don't call
Yeah,
me that, right? Then,
absolutely.
like in the same breath, they started roasting one another and thought that was hilarious, and it just reinforced that you're in this environment where you are used to and accepting negative affirmations. I said, all right, let's move beyond that. You don't think you're a genius right now? That's cool. That's why I'm here, actually. So then I
Yeah.
got this question about what you hate, though.
Yeah.
And these 10 little boys that can never agree on anything, what to play, how to play it, when, they all told me the same thing. And what do you think that was? It was like, we hate this, Mr. Key. Now what? What do you think it was that they told me?
School.
It's like, we hate school. What you gonna do with that?
Right.
They thought they had messed my whole workshop up. I was like, yo, you don't know what you just did, though. You don't know what you just said, because if you take this definition that I'm telling you about what your passion is, because when you find your passion, you find your element. Like the fish putting the
Mhm.
fish in water. When you
Mhm.
find what it is that you hate, what it is that you've been put on this planet to address and fix, you are
Mhm.
locked into your passion. So I say, you all telling me that you hate school is letting me know that I'm looking at 10 future educators.
Mm.
Like, oh snap! They got quiet. They tried to back up from me. I was like, nah, where you going? And I was like, let me explain this a little further, right?
Mhm.
I said, I don't mind you telling me that you hate school. It makes sense that you hate school because this system that you come to every day is looking at you as a fish. You got gills, fins, scales, you're streamlined for water, and telling you to climb this tree
Mhm.
every day.
Yeah.
And so you come to school like, I don't fit in here. I'm a fish
Right.
out of water. I hate this place. So I was
Mhm.
like, look, there are 8 different learning styles. And I was like, but at most, schools only teaching from 3.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't speak the logical mindset or the mathematical, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
don't speak that language, but everything is being, all the information that's being disseminated is coming through this logical perspective, you can be like, I don't understand what they're saying. This
Right.
don't make any sense to me. I hate this place.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a visual learner and everything is being put into you in vision, you're like, I don't understand. If you're not
Mm-hmm.
a verbal learner,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't feel like I belong here. Maybe something is wrong with me. But what about the other 5 learning styles? I'll share 3 of them. One is a kinesthetic learner. Kinesthetic learners got to move to process information, but every time
Mm-hmm.
they get up, sit down, be still. Dang it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My learning is being suppressed. I hate this place, right?
Yeah.
I believe a lot of athletes are kinesthetic learners because their prowess is on a field or on a court where they're allowed to process information as they move and internalize it and make reactions and responses to it. That's their
Mm-hmm.
getting into their genius. What about the exploratory or expeditionary learner that got to use their hands to
Mm-hmm.
process information? But when they go to put their hands on something or someone, hey, keep your hands to yourself. Dang it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hate this place. And then there's the creative, the right brain thinker, which you
Mm-hmm.
and I tap into that, the right brain thinker. But it's like, yo, everything is coming from a mathematical perspective. This doesn't make any place. So I was like, it makes sense that you hate school. But here's where the system can get resolved and fixed. I'm like, instead of running away from the thing that you hate, which is school, what if you ran towards it? David ran towards Goliath. He was the only one that ran towards him. You run towards this giant that's making you feel like you don't belong, and you take your learning style and make it become a teaching style as
Mm-hmm.
an educator. Now, when you get up there in front of the class, you're going to read somebody else that's a kinesthetic learner or interpersonal or whatever other the other 5 learning styles that are not being represented, and you're going to begin to supplement the system and fix it so that now all 8 styles are being represented instead of just 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's game changing.
absolutely. I agree. Totally.
And so it's not just, that's a great example, but every industry that exists where human beings are involved has this same problem.
Right.
And the industry in the world will continue to be broken. Because would you agree the world is broken, Chuck?
Yeah. I mean, people are, at least, not the world. The world's going to blow up every human being. But yeah. Yeah.
The systems that make up the overall world that we know, the culture and the cultures that we know is
Mm-hmm.
broken. But everybody is looking around like, well, somebody else got to fix it. I don't have nothing to do with that. Somebody else will do something about it.
Yeah.
Or we keep attributing genius to people that are dead and gone, and can't do anything, can't react to the way the world is acting now. And so getting into your passion begins to tap into your element and let you know what it is that you were put on this planet to address. But then the next logical question is, Chuck, like, all right, I know what I hate, I know what's broken, I know what's traumatized me. How do I fix it?
Mm-hmm.
And the solution is kind of simple. Like, if you a homeowner, if you see something that's broken around your house and you kind of assess it and you're like, yo, I think I can fix that. Once you put it in your mind that I can do something about it, what you got to look for next if something's broken in your home to try and fix it.
What 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 do you need to fix it?
Yeah, what's the tool that I need? What's the right tool to address this thing that's broken in my house? And
Yeah.
so the next component of genius is talent. T for
Mm-hmm.
talent, T for tool. Like, when you look around and you see what's broken, you got to look like, well, what's in my hand? What do I possess that I can use to fix what's broken? And that thing that we all possess, some of us don't believe that we possess anything, but we all possess it, is talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
just to fast track us through to the last component, your purpose in life, our purpose in life, is to identify our talent and use it as a tool to address and fix what's broken in our passion.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's been given to me to define genius for people so that they can see themselves in it and begin to get to work.
Right.
So, I've been talking for a little too long. I'm gonna flip it over to you. Like, what's your talent? What do you say your talent is, Chuck?
Oh, I have a lot of talents, man. I mean, sheesh. I wish I had more time to use it, but I have a lot of artistic ability. Some of it is like I can draw, like literally draw. Some of it is more like, aesthetics, like color schemes, or or abstract. I didn't go formally to school for art. I'm an art. I like to say I'm an art school dropout, which is actually oddly enough a play off Kanye West. But but I never stopped the art. I just didn't do it in the same fashion. I
Yeah.
just I just infused it within what I do with all hip hop. So I have a lot of talents in the arts. Um, I got a little bit of musical talent, which is something I don't do hardly enough. But I recently did a song with a legend, Cool G Rap. So,
Oh, word.
yeah, so I'm working on some of that too, just to, there's a phrase called die empty. And I really am not into leaving, leaving this physical realm without, without, leaving something for people to remember that
Yes.
I did have those talents. So yeah, man, I'm a good writer. I don't think I made it to great writer because the internet really took over, but I do plan to knock out a book or two. Um, and then I think there's other talents too, man, which are not you can't look at them. The ability to sort of pull people together, to lead, to create harmony amongst people. Like me and this guy that I mentioned, we had like what could have really turned into a big beef. Yeah, I actually got to give him more of the credit, but in terms of not pulling people apart or causing friction, but more like trying to help folks and things of that nature. That I think I really consider that a talent too.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So for me, I think you're right. We all have talents, but you have to be willing to work for that. You have to be willing to put in the work and the time and the energy to develop those talents as well. Everybody's not going to be, Whitney Houston. I mean, I'm just using a name of someone that seemed to be just supernaturally gifted. But from what I understand, everybody can sing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's just some people are naturally gifted and everyone else has to work really hard
Right.
to learn how to sing.
Yeah.
So I'm a hard worker, man. So the talents that I have, for me, like picking up the pen and writing again after a very, very long time, and letting my idol rapper, like the guy that really wanted, like really inspired me to be a really dope rapper, to see his reaction to that is everything, right?
Yeah.
But that's where the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours that I put in from when I was young to when I started, just say hypothetically, when I started working, it's still there. It's like muscle memory.
Yep.
So that's it. My greatest talent though is my inability to give up.
Okay.
That's
I get that.
I know that's not a talent per se, but
No, but
man,
it can be though, Chuck. Like there are people, and some people who the minute an obstacle comes, they think everything is supposed to be. There's a lot of reasons why people think that life is supposed to be easy. There's entitlement. There's
mhm.
hey, my life ain't been no crystal stair, so I deserve X, Y, and Z. There's some people who
Right,
just put their nose to the ground. It's like, you know what? I don't care what life gives me. I'm going to plow through it. And then when other people see that work ethic and see that I'm not going to be denied, that inspires them. So it's just like with Whitney Houston. Like, yeah, Whitney Houston has this voice of a generation, and
mhm.
people will aspire towards that can sing. They may not ever get to her level, but they can
Right,
aspire because they see the example. And so it's important for people that have that drive that you do, that have this, hey, look, I don't care what it is, that other people see it.
right.
And it's important because other people that look like you got to be encouraged by that, because otherwise they all they'll see is a Steve Jobs who dropped out of high school, or Bill Gates, and that's inspiring, but it's
Mhm.
like different when this looked the same as
Mhm.
oh, it's
Yeah.
possible. Oh, they weren't given a lane, they made a lane. Okay. All
Yeah.
hip hop wasn't all hip hop faced all types of adversity, and to your word, violence. But hey, look, the Bible says the violent, the kingdom of God suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. Like, hey, look, we gonna go out here. and we're going to war for what it is that we feel like we deserve. Going back to David and Goliath real quick. See, I'm getting hyped. Let me calm down. You know, I can get hyped. uh, David wasn't accepted by Israel as their king at first. He was off in a small area, but once he started making a name for himself and getting his kingdom in order, all the rest of Judah was like, yo, we need to either line up with this dude or we gonna get run over by him. And so they elected him, like, let him go ahead and rule over us. Let us choose to let him rule over us, because otherwise he gonna come in and his kingdom is advancing. He gonna make his way wherever. And I see that in all hip hop. Like I wanted you on the show because, you know, I'm not saying I was there from the beginning, but I saw the impetus. I saw the beginnings of it, and I've watched it grow for all these years, and it's been like astounding, and it encouraged me. There was something in me that I didn't know was there, that now, you know, I got my web. I've had, you know, several iterations of my website now, and I got several different things and platforms that I'm developing. The only place that I have yet to go that can mirror what you do is, like, you're providing jobs for people. Like, you're helping to have some people have a career.
Yeah.
And that's because you know what it means to like literally make something out of nothing. And you know how to take, hey, look, you know, you didn't profess to have this great talent. You're like, look, I write, but you don't want to call it like this great. It doesn't matter. Like, what you think of it, as long as you acknowledge it, because there's plenty of people, again, you know, some people who are like, I don't have it. I don't have a talent. Talent is generational. It comes by way of your lineage. If people don't know what their lineage is, or people just disregard it, like, most of the time, the talent that we possess is something that's common to us. Just like I'm saying, genius is common. And so we overlook it.
Yeah.
Other people's talent looks more appealing. Like, we'll recognize generational talent in athletes and entertainers and all types of people, but we won't see it like that same pattern of, hey, they come from a line of singers. They come from a family of football players, but we don't see that family of whatever in us. And we got to see that.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And having talked to your brother already, I know a little bit about your family. I learned more and more over the years, but I know that what's on the inside of you and your brother didn't come out of anywhere. It came from your father, and it came from your father's father, and it's just continues to perpetuate itself and then respond to the world around it to make room. And that's genius, man. Because it's not just making room for you. It's not just making room for your family. It's saying, like, hey, you got something on the inside of you. I'm gonna show you how to light it. You got something on the inside. I'm gonna show you how to be driven by it. You got something on the inside of you. That's a part of your talent, man. Yeah, that is a talent.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and I live by, you know, you can have a match and you can light another match, and that's two light, you know, that's two matches. And it's not like you don't have to be the only one lit, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to light another match, you know, or they want the, you know, they want to be the only match that's got the fire. And I've never been like that. I mean, and no pun intended, it has burned us a couple times, you know what I mean? Because not only have we populated most of our competitors with our lighting other matches, but, you know, some people have, you know, sort of turned their back on us, and you start to see, you know, the way the industry works. But I don't mind. I don't, you know, it bothers me sometimes, but it doesn't, you know, cause me to leave or lack motivation, you know, but it is telling.
I'm gonna tell you this, man. Like, there are some people, you're almost done, man. I'm gonna let you go, but there are some people who see you're meant to be an inspiration for those who got to explore what it is on the inside of them that's special. But there are some people who become imitators, though, because they still are afraid to figure out what's on the inside of them, and so they'll copy. And so you had a lot of people that came in and started copying all hip hop, right? And copy never sustained. Like, the copy, the integrity, the quality of the original is diminished, and eventually people begin to recognize it. Like, yo, I see these two different websites, but something about this one is crisper than this one. This one is fuzzy, man. And these other things are going to fizz out. And just like David's kingdom, your kingdom, your website, your genius is going to expand, and it's going to cause others to be inspired who have similar and dissimilar passions and talents, because it is possible for somebody else to hate the same thing you hate, but the way they get at it is different than how you approach it because their talent is different. And so in the year in the months and years to come, like I just see you being one who, I know you do a lot of talking, like workshops and facilitations and things like that. But being able to tell somebody like, look, I got the blueprint right here, but don't try to mimic my talent though. Like, what's your talent and how can you get it to make room for you the way I do? And that's powerful. Like, no, don't do what I do. Do something different. The world is changing. If you do what I did 25 years ago, it's not going to work because the world ain't the same. It's different now.
That's a
To me,
fact.
right?
Yeah. Right.
How do we take all hip hop? How do we take something like that into the metaverse rap now? Right? That wasn't even an option before. And
That's a
so, as
fact.
long as you continue to allow that space to light that match and to make sure that they are responding to the environment as it exists around them and not how it existed 25 years ago, then your genius is going to continue to impact others and inspire others to light up as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's true. And I try to get young people to understand that, just that, especially the ones that work with us. I try to let them know that you have to, what is your talent? What is your genius? What is your vision? How do you see things? Bring that to the table. I don't need you to bring what you think I want to the table. I need you to bring what is uniquely you to the table, even in hip hop, even if I don't agree. I want you to tell me your point of view so that we can advance what it is we're trying to do. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're out of alignment with our vision. It just means you're bringing to the table. And what a lot of people don't realize is that's exactly what I did every step of the way. You know, we talk about all hip hop being 25, 24, but we don't talk enough about all the companies I poured into, all the people who I worked with concurrently or before, because I was trying to find my way too.
Right.
So there was a website called mofat.com, and I poured everything I was, I poured into that venture. I went to HBO owned volume.com and I poured into HBO, I poured into that. I worked at Right On Magazine. I wrote for every magazine and I poured as much of myself into each one of those that I could. And then BET, worked at BET for 4 years, gave BET everything.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough for me to pour everything into them. They wanted my resignation from all hip hop and they wanted something that I couldn't give them at BET. I tried to let them know, like, what we do, you can't do. And we were wild and reckless back then. The stuff we were doing was so out of the lines and advanced that BET could never, and they just didn't understand that. And I'm like, okay, so you're just trying to take my soul, or you're just trying to steal,
Diminish yours.
trying to put my light out, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I actually resigned. Well, I was fired. Was I? Yeah, I was fired. Yeah, I was fired. Yeah, definitely fired. But it was a good firing, man. You know what I'm saying? It was a good firing.
You're a vanguard. That's the word that's coming to mind. A vanguard is, these companies today are all about conglomerations and eating up the smaller company and trying to, like Disney is doing that. They're buying up everything, right?
Yeah.
But you have this model that says, hey, look, we can both be successful and thrive together, even if we're in the same market. Like I don't gotta try and compete with your market shares. My thing, I have my niche, my niche.
Yeah.
I understand what it is. Do you know what yours is?
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
all we're gonna do is compliment, right? Um,
But let me say this, man. If BET had let me run BET.com at that time, that website would be the most dominant force online now. They had no idea. They wanted to be all hip hop, which is mind blowing because all hip hop was dealing with the underground. We never, well, I won't. We never had a one-on-one interview with Jay-Z, for example. You know what I'm saying? To this day, as an example. And so my point is they had the whole musical landscape and beyond, because it's not just music, it's
Yeah.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Vision, bro. Vision.
Yeah.
Vision. No, no vision. Just eat up, eat,
Yeah.
consume, take, blot out. It was nuts. It's still nuts. And when you think about genius, I always wonder who really invented the iPhone. There's a lot of stories out there, but
Mm-hmm.
there's people who work for Apple or who work for um, Tesla or whatever, and they're geniuses, but Elon Musk gets the credit. Now, I'm not saying I don't know much about Elon Musk, so maybe he did invent exactly what the Tesla is, but I doubt it. I'm
Right.
sure he had a crew, somebody, there's someone there and he's the head or the spokes, or whatever. And Steve Jobs, for a fact he didn't invent the iPod. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, so I always want, and you know what? If they and even if those people did try to invent their own iPod, they're gonna get crushed because these companies are so big.
Yeah.
And so I feel proud that all hip hop was never crushed, never consumed, never lost. Well, I say we might have veered off a little bit sometimes, but over 25,
You're gonna
you're gonna hit some. Yeah, it's not a straight line.
nope.
You
You're
know,
the Tesla of all hip hop. And when I say Tesla, I'm talking about Nikolai Tesla because Nikolai Tesla,
mm,
he came alongside, he competed with Edison and was trying to give away this energy for free. Like I know how to generate this energy and do it for free. And I'm like, you stupid. You should be charging for this.
right.
And though his name eventually has gone under and didn't get to the elevation of an Edison, he made
Mm-hmm.
Edison better though because
Yeah.
he was coming
Right.
up with this AC, this alternate way of getting energy that nobody else was doing. And
Mm,
now his name is starting to be, of course, you had this whole brand of car, right? But now
right.
his name is starting to come around, and now you're starting to see his contributions and all his trademarks and things like that. But it just, I don't know why the world works like this sometimes, but when you have something that's indelible, it it will it will
Mm-hmm.
make its mark, whether it's seen or unseen, right? And your mark, your imprint is there. I want to thank you for. I do this probably every 5 years or so, but listening to and hearing more of your story now, and listening to when you were a writer pouring out and giving your all, and not being concerned with whether or not somebody was going to say something that was contradictory, but giving them a spot. You did that for me, man. Like you let me know that I could be a writer. I could put my Christianity on my chest, and he was like, "Yo, just put it out there." Like you gave me room, which then let me know that I could do this eventually on my own. And so, I hear now because of what you have gone through and how your mentality is, which is a part of your genius. You didn't allow me to say, "Hey, look, let me just hold your match up. Here you go.
Mm,
What you
right.
want to do?" You gave me a platform for a couple of years. You let me say some things. You let me judge and critique hip hop. And he was like, "All right, just make sure you ain't got no grammar or errors in it, and let's put it out there and see what happens." And salute. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome, bro. It was, you were good for it. Definitely. So it wouldn't put it up there with some mess. You know what I mean?
Right,
No,
right.
no, that's dope though. I love hearing those stories, man. And as we, approach 25, I think we're gonna tap in with a lot of people. My goal really is to create a documentary, or at least the backbone of a documentary that's a definitive telling of our history. We're working on a documentary. At least we're in the early stages of a documentary that tells about sort of 25 years of news stories that we broke in and things, definitive news stories. But I really personally want a definitive story of all hip hop. Like me and Greg met on this day in Delaware and shook hands and agreed to work together. And before that, we were in the scene locally, da 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 da. And I want that story to be told, because it's cliche now, but we have to tell our own stories. There's a
We do.
lot of people right now that are not of the culture, that are telling the culture's story, and they'll overlook all hip hop and act like Complex or Mass Appeal. And this is respectfully,
Mm-hmm.
because both of those brands are 20 plus years old. So I don't mean any ill towards them, but when you start talking about DJ Vlad and other people, as being sort of the culture as far as media is concerned. We have to correct them. And I had to correct Vlad publicly on Twitter because he tried to claim, being the longest running independent hip hop site platform. And I said, nah, bro, hold up.
Yeah.
We're here. Yes. We're still here. We're still independent. And we put you on our platform when you weren't, when you was nothing. And that's a fact. And that's the thing with hip hop. We give everybody a hug. Come on in, baby. Come on in the house. And then what happens now? A lot of people regard Vlad as the worst thing to ever happen to media. Now, I don't necessarily feel that way. I think we have to be better and smarter, but that's another story. At any rate, man, look, man, I appreciate you, Reg. Love you. I respect you. I think that you are a genius for sure. And in a lot of ways, actually. So I want to make sure that that my existence is not like forgotten and overlooked, and I don't want to leave nothing on the table, man. Just like the Eagles last night when they whooped them Cowboys.
Yes, sir.
Leave it all on the field, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Second, man. Appreciate you coming on the show. And Chuck, it's well, let me just end this formally. This has been Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. And Chuck is my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
Thank you, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.